Here's a question for you. What is the ideal structure for you and your podcast? Whether you're recording a solo cast where it's just you hitting record and pontificating, or you have a guest, do you ever get stuck, or are you worried that you might get stuck? Are you concerned that your podcast might be too short or too long? Well, let's talk about the ideal structure for you and your podcast. Hey, this is Robert Plank. Here's a question for you. What is the ideal structure for you and your podcast? Whether you're recording a solo cast where it's just you hitting record and pontificating, or you have a guest, do you ever get stuck, or are you worried that you might get stuck? Are you concerned that your podcast might be too short or too long? Well, let's talk about the ideal structure for you and your podcast. I'm Robert Plank, and my book is wwwhwbook.com, and the sequence here applies directly to you and any kind of content you make, especially video, but also podcasting. And the structure is why, what, how to, what if. And here's what this means. It means that instead of just info dumping, instead of just listing out facts, tips, bullet points, you are probably aware that there's a need for bookends, for window dressing, for setting up the problem, for aligning with someone's pain, for someone who is locating you and your content to know that they are in the right place, that they're not just watching a video for the fun of it, but they are looking to solve an exact problem from you. Even if your podcast episode is only 10 or 20 minutes long, even if your YouTube video is only 3 or 5 minutes long, apply this formula. Why, what, how to, what if. So here's what this means. Let's first focus on the two ends of this, the why, if I can point to the right thing, the why and the what if. Start off with the problem. Why is someone even watching your video? Why are they even listening to your podcast? If you're interviewing someone who is an expert in real estate, well, someone is listening to that episode because they're curious about real estate, they're afraid of making mistakes, they don't want their money to be locked into some kind of investment, they don't want to lose money, they don't want to create a headache. So we bring up all of these problems, all these concerns, all these fears that led to somebody doing a Google search or an Apple search or a YouTube search or whatever, and finding you in your podcast episode. Start with why, focus on why, explain to people why they're even there listening to you in your episode, and then the end, skipping ahead to the end of your content, including your podcast, is the what if section. And we'll get to the middle, I promise, but think about this. Don't just say, here's some advice, great. Say, now here are the next steps to take. And you could recap the information that you just dumped out and said, we had talked about a lot of things, but here's 3 or 4 quick wins, quick actionable pieces of advice, some actions you should take. A call to action can include a URL, web address, social media, email address, a place to go to after someone has listened to your podcast episode. And if you are interviewing a guest, here's what this means. Is that during the why portion, when you're setting up the problem that's to be solved, you read your guest's bio, and you jump into something to talk about the problem. And my usual starting point for interviewing a guest is, what has you excited, passionate, fired up in the last 6 to 12 months? And so now we'll be talking about something fresh, newsworthy, unique, that is solving a problem that someone who is listening is experiencing. We start with why, and then at the end, in the what if section, I will ask my guest about some parting final words of advice or something to say to wrap up the conversation, and I will ask my guest about their URLs and resources they want to plug. And the idea behind this is that if someone is listening to our episode and they're intrigued and they want to know more, and we can only say so much in a 20-minute show, now here's the place to go. Go to this website, subscribe to this podcast, click a button and schedule an appointment, something like that. Give somebody a place to go after they have digested this podcast episode. We've covered the why, we've covered the what if. Let's talk about the 2 middle pieces real quick, I promise. And you probably already do this for the most part, but maybe sometimes out of order. And this is really important. Set the table first, right? Explain what it is that you're going to explain or teach someone. You might have heard that old saying, tell them what it is you're about to teach them, then teach them that thing, then tell them what you just taught them. And many times it's easy to jump into steps, jump into the how-to, and forget about explaining a few things such as alternatives that someone might have tried that did not work, that has led them to this solution. It's easy to forget to explain about terms and concepts and ideas and things like that. That way, when you explain a step-by-step process and you throw out this jargon, these keywords, then someone knows what you're talking about when you talk about website caching or a WordPress plugin or a WordPress theme or web hosting or something like that. As long as just explain real quick, just to get everyone caught up, what WordPress is or what web hosting is or what an autoresponder is, and then explain how to solve that problem, I promise you it'll make a lot of sense. And so to get you caught up so far, because we're kind of going in a few different angles of attack here, you start off with why someone's here. So let's say you're interviewing a real estate expert who knows a lot about buying up distressed properties and fixing them up and then flipping them, right? You would say, well, maybe, so why are you here? Well, you're interested in real estate, but you know that there are a lot of different ways to get into it and a lot of things that might be risky or take a lot of money and might fail. And so then you get into your guest bio and what it is they're talking about. And then maybe for the what section, you play devil's advocate. You say, okay, well, your real estate strategy is this, but other people might buy and rent, or other people might, like lease real estate or something like that. And so why is your method the best thing for us to do? And what do real estate newbies need to know about you and your process? And then you get into the how-to step-by-step process. My problem for so many years was just focusing on the how-to. I would jump right in. I would say, let's not even talk about the problem. I would say, let's not even worry about terminology and things like that. I would say, just walk me through some steps, walk me through the 7 steps, and then we wouldn't recap at the end, and then it would be kind of hard to follow and wouldn't make a lot of sense. And so now what we do instead is we do why, we set up the problem, we go to what, and we explain the principles, the alternatives, the definitions. Then we go into the how-to and the step-by-step, which is where we kind of get as deep as we want. And then when it's just about too much, when it's just about maybe too confusing, we step back and we recap what we talked about. We talk about a couple of key takeaways, and then we say, now that you've gotten a taste of what we jumped into, now here's the what if section, and now here's something that you should consider or do moving on, or take this action, or research this, or even better, just go to this website, go to this resource, go buy this guest's book and take the next step. And so my book here is www.hwbook.com. And what I would like to do for you is I would like to either create your podcast if you don't have one, or I would like to take over your podcast, so that way all you have to do is just show up and think about this interview process and think about this content formula. So check us out at dfypodcast.com/free. I'm Robert Plank, and I look forward to speaking with you soon at dfypodcast.com/free. Bye for now, and see you soon.